But hindi mo naman first time
Hindi
maka-experience
naman. Because
Sa
growing
church.
up in church, we had summer camps where...
So medyo cool pa nun kasi growing up you had guy
Yes,
friends.
I had guy friends naman growing up. I realized as a church kid, I feel old.
Hello guys and welcome to Those Church Kids, a podcast where you encounter youth who encountered the truth. Who met the truth pala. I'll get used to that tagline. But today, we hear the story of a close friend of mine, Bea.
Hello.
So Bea, syempre ang unang tanong, since this is Those Church Kids, what makes you a church kid?
Good question. So, I actually grew up in a very Christian household. So, I had parents who actually met each other through the same community that we are currently a part of now.
Which is ang ligaya ng Panginoon.
Which is ang ligaya ng Panginoon. So, we grew up. So, they met in ang ligaya ng Panginoon. And I'm the eldest of three girls in the family. We learned how to pray at a very young age.
Gaano ka young?
Grabe, 0 years old. As I was birthed into this world, I was already praying as early as that. And my parents were very active, continued to be active in our community to the point where they actually became leaders as well in the community. So it was a very busy childhood growing up, balancing school, and of course during weekends we would have a lot of activities in our community. So that was my context, and that was my background, and that was how it was growing up.
Yeah.
So,
And when you say Christian household, how does that look like?
very interesting. So we, again, prayed every day together as a family. We would have dinner every day and breakfast as well if it was possible. We would go to mass every Sunday. We would also dedicate Saturday nights as a family time for us. I was also enrolled in an all-girls Catholic school. They made sure that growing up, both at home and at school, it was a very Catholic and Christian background for us. And our life revolved around putting God at the center of our life and our family. So,
And actually, if I may say, your family is really very admirable in living out faithfully yung how we intend to live as a community. You know, being faithful in attending gatherings. But siguro, malaking bagay din naman ngayon kasi yung parents mo are actually leaders also in the community.
Yeah.
But how did that translate for you and your siblings?
Grabe, growing up, we would wake up so early every Sunday. It was already part of our routine because Saturday and Sundays were family days for
So wala
us.
ibang mga...
Yeah, so I would really avoid starting Saturday evening going out with friends and even Sundays because again that was dedicated family time for us. So I actually had fun as a community kid. I felt like I had a group of friends outside school. I had church friends, my batchmates, who I would see every Saturday and Sunday during events and gatherings. So I felt like I had my school friends and I also had my church friends. So
Those things that you mentioned, you attribute those to living or growing in a Christian household.
yes, definitely. I've always felt that my family was so close together, and I felt like that was the norm. And I felt like all families were like that because this is how my family was. So it was a very safe environment for me growing up, and very fun as well.
So you said that you felt like that was the norm. So ngayon ba, parang yun ba yung feeling mo? Hindi pala yun yung...
Yeah, it was
was there a certain point wherein you realize, ay, hindi pala ito yung na-experience ng
Yeah, like when I became a teenager, actually, I thought going to mass every Sunday was something that all families did. I thought Saturday evenings were also reserved all the time for families because they would invite me to their birthday parties, and it was on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and I was like, oh, don't you have something with your families? I was so naive to the fact that not all families were like ours. And I realized, oh, you don't have a community or a church group that you're a part of. So that's when I started to realize that there was a difference with how my routine was in life versus like what I was seeing with my other school friends. And that escalated more during college, I would say, where it was suddenly a co-ed school. So I graduated from UP Diliman, which is a very radical, I would say, university. Very radical university. And that was when I would say that my world and I was open.
So, yung pagkakalaki mo as a church kid, I don't know, I think it's a common experience. Ako, like, I would relate to some points that you mentioned. Na parang, at some point, I felt like I was kind of sheltered. Or like, I grew up in some sort of bubble. Hindi pala ito yung...
This isn't the reality.
Yung mundo or something like that. Do you feel like that was actually a hindrance for you?
When I got to college, there were people with completely different values and views from me.
Parang makaka-experience ka talaga ng people who are actually opposite of your beliefs.
Very, very
and that's
different.
life.
With the way that they speak, the way that they carry themselves, the values that they believe in. So it was very different from what I experienced growing up.
Saturdays and Sundays are for family time. Basically, your weekends or breaks as a student growing up.
My social life was community, was with my church friends, because my parents would usually allow me if I was gonna go out with my church friends. It was very difficult. I remember crying that one time because I was in high school and my dad didn't allow me to go to this batch night, and everyone was there, but he was saying that it's a Saturday night, we have plans as a family, so I needed to prioritize that over any party. And that was the first time I think that I really cried and did not talk to my dad for a week, because I resented the fact that it was so hard to ask permission to go out to events that were not within or that were not in church. And not to say that I didn't have friends in school, so I would of course
friends mo pa rin naman sila.
Yeah, I still have friends from school until
si Bea din nakapunta ng
sleepover. My friends were very understanding, so buti na lang they were very understanding regarding that. But again, my relationships and friendships in church grew because my parents actually encouraged me to go out and to build relationships with them. So there.
Because I was gonna ask, like, especially for a kid, or even high school, lalo na growing up, diba? Tapos ganun yung established structure or pattern for you.
Honestly, I love my family and I love my parents so much. They were very intentional with spending time with us and building relationships with us. We would have these things called one-to-ones where every month I would go out with either my mom or I'd go out with my dad. And it's date with my parents. So even if there were those moments where, I'm so annoyed at them, or I didn't necessarily agree with the decisions that they made. Again, it was only later on in life that I understood why they were doing those things. But they filled our life growing up with very happy and positive memories. They were very intentional with quality time spent with us as a family. That's why I don't think I ever came to that point where I was so mad at my parents. So I'm grateful for that. Shout out to my parents. Thank you so much for setting that example and for setting that environment for us growing up.
Yes.
I think though when I moved into college, again, it was I was given more freedom, and I think that's when my mind was opened to the world out there. So I was able to go to more places because I joined some organizations as well that had a lot of different events. There was a need to check in with my parents also if I could go to some of these events, especially on weekends. And they'd be like, okay, as long as you let us know where you are. So we had rules in college where, okay, as long as you're home by 12, as long as you tell us where you are, as long as you inform us right away about your schedule. So I experienced a little bit more freedom, but with that also came, of course, that's when I would say doubt started creeping into my mind, or maybe I started to question things a little bit more about the church. Yeah, so I think it was more doubts about some of my beliefs and some of the values that I got growing up, because I actually saw that people in college, even if some of them didn't believe in a God or didn't believe in the same God as me, they were living happy and fulfilled lives. They were okay. It wasn't as if something was missing in their lives. It wasn't as if they had problems in life. So I really felt like they seem okay, but who they are is different from how I was and how I grew up.
I get that. Parang hindi ko alam, kung pumasok ba sa isip mo is, should I have gone through yung ganong strictness or at least like ganong kind of life just for me to be where I am at, just to see
right
like
now.
Parang hindi naman pala kailangan yung church life.
yeah like I met friends whose parents weren't strict at all. I met friends who were so rich that they got everything that they asked for. I met friends who were allowed to go to parties every night, who were allowed to go out and travel with their friends all the time, even cutting classes, and they were happy. So in my head, my question was, okay, that was the route that they went with. I think that's when the what if started creeping in. What if my life was like that? What if I experienced more things growing up? What if I wasn't so sheltered? What if I didn't get to know God at an early age? What if I spent more of my time exploring the world out there, meeting more friends than being confined to the friends I had in church?
Ang tanong ng lahat ng church kids. What if I was born not a Christian or like not in a Christian family, di ba? Parang would life be so different, or like would it have ended up the same way that you're living it now?
Abangan.
So actually, was there a point in your life na parang na-pinpoint mo talaga na, and I know this is quite hard for a lot of people who were born a church kid, or like when I say church kid kasi parang basically yung family mo sobrang like faithful, religious, and even part of a community, na yun na yung kinalakhan mo. Was there a point na kung kailan mo talaga na-experience na eto, si Lord to, or like nakilala ko siya?
I think it was in college where I had my first real and personal experience with the Lord. Because growing up, I knew the Lord because of my parents. I knew the Lord because of community. I knew that God is this because my titas and titas in the community told me this. But in college, after a very life-changing, I would say, experience, it was then that I felt how personal the Lord was in my life. And He wasn't just a God that my parents or my family or my community believed in, but He was also a God that I personally could believe in. It happened because all my life, again, it was this perfect, ideal world. I felt like all my prayers were answered because I was in a generally happy family and happy environment. But when I was given the freedom to live my life, I decided to choose a course that was very prestigious in UP Diliman at that time. I was fueled by the desire to excel because I felt like I could. I felt like I felt like my track record in excelling and in achieving was going to carry me through as well in this phase and in this stage in my life. But the Lord took that away when He said, "Oh wait, that's your plan, but I have a different plan for you." And it was the first time in my life that my plan and God's plans for me did not necessarily align.
Anong course?
So,
Kunyari hindi ko alam.
I took up business administration and accountancy for my first year in college. I did not meet the required grade to stay in that course. That's why I was forced to shift out of that course and into business administration. I cried so much. I remember hating God. It was the first time in my life that I hated God for bringing me to this circumstance and this situation. It was an unfamiliar feeling because, again, all my life, I saw how the Lord provided for me and my family, how the Lord carried me through. But suddenly, this experience of failing and this experience of suddenly parang nawala yung streak of success that I had in my head. The Lord took that away from me. Bakit naman ganon, Lord? Bakit naman? And that was the first time I questioned God. That was the first time I hated God. But again, that was also my first real encounter and experience with the Lord. I isolated myself. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I remember that summer, before transitioning to my new course, I barely went out. To cut the long story short, of course, I had no choice. I had to go back to school that first semester again, in a new course, start building friendships with new people. And I saw how the Lord carried me through that. It was really not by my own strength, but the Lord's grace that He carried me through that very rough time in my life. And that was when I proved to myself that a different version of God was revealed to me. It wasn't just a God who answered prayers, but in spite of the challenges and the rough things that I went through, He's also a God who sees me through those challenges and those difficulties. So my image of, okay, if you have God in your life, everything will be perfect. That image of God was changed, and I had a different perspective because, okay, it's more God will carry you through in the imperfect times in your life. That was when I also started to take my relationship with the Lord a bit seriously. I started becoming more active in Christ Youth in Action, but it really helped me develop a personal relationship with God, not because of my family or of my parents, but because of my own personal decision and personal choice.
Yeah. You mentioned like that whole shifting process was a challenge for you, and the Lord like put you through.
Yeah.
I mean,
Carried me through.
Carried you through pala.
Yeah.
Put you through it,
You through,
but also carried
me
you through it.
Correct.
Like, what were some concrete examples of you experiencing that kind of grace from the Lord?
I mentioned isolating myself because I was ashamed that I didn't meet the required grade to pass the course that I wanted. But the Lord brought friendships and people into my life that allowed me to shift the focus away from myself and from what I was feeling allowed me to enjoy life and allowed me to journey through the whole college experience with lots of memories and lots of good moments together. They were also part of Christ Youth in Action. I prayed to the Lord, ayoko na, I feel so alone. Like, I don't wanna be focusing on my sadness anymore. So I really prayed for friends to carry me through and bring me through.
I just see the importance kasi of, especially in the ups and downs of life, the consistency of relationships, of friendships. That's one. But friendships grounded in and rooted in God, that's also another. Parang it really brings your focus back to
That's true.
to Him. It was just inspiring to see how your relationship with the Lord took a turn because of that challenge. That really challenged. Actually, a lot of it talaga with God, it's really humility. Diba?
Yeah.
Parang realizing at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's really about the Lord and how He can put a lot of plot twists in your life but still make His presence consistently felt.
That's
And
true.
parang hindi mo yung ma-realize na wala yung downs talaga.
I think at the end of the day, being a Christian isn't confined to your household or to your environment, but we are Christians in order to spread that light outside the circles that we usually are in. And I was grateful that I had friends and I had people and I had a community that I got to do that with.
Yeah.
So that is I guess, turning point talaga for me, like being able to shift focus away from myself and more on the people around me. And that made God more concrete also and more personal in my life outside my family.
Yeah, I think that really is also part of the challenge to again put God first and yourself out of the picture.
Yeah.
And most of the time that means being in this world and being opposite of their beliefs and still having to stand up for God.
That's true. That's true. I remember making a commitment in college that I didn't want to curse or say bad words. But it was very difficult when the people around me, when that was the language of the people around me. I also remember making a decision to pray before meals, even if other people would not necessarily pray right away before meals. It was difficult to, again, be different. It's little things, I think.
Nakaka-inspire kasi yun yung parang constantly you're just surrounded with people who live the life that you hope to embody and are quite ahead also in a way.
It's true.
And I realize inisip ko palagi, like, bakit ko nga ba gusto gawin to? In the first
Bakit
place.
nga ba, Rap?
Bakit ko gusto magpakahirap na sundin si Lord, buhayin yung community life that we have, wake up on Sundays in the morning, honor our parents, etc., etc. And it really is coming from, the start really is yung personal experience talaga with the Lord. And just a realization of how little we are before Him. And it makes sense to just, nga, sige Lord, ikaw na bahala.
I realized as a church kid, I feel old in terms of my relationship with God. That's why I think the Lord uses so many milestones in my life to be able to remind me of where I started and how far I've gone also, to fuel me for the road ahead or for the future. Again, it started with God being very distant and God being a God I believed in because of my family. But eventually, as I grew older and grew older in the Lord and in my relationship with the Lord, I realized it's not about it's about endurance and running the race and finishing strong also. And I think I'm fueled by God's grace, He has allowed many milestones in my life where He has allowed me to experience Him through failures, through challenges, through friendships and relationships also.
I get that. Like, I realize nga no, na in terms of Christian age, quote unquote, basically we
Correct.
started at day zero.
Correct.
Just because of our parents in a way.
Correct.
And it's a weird position to be in to gain some sort of maturity, sometimes even false maturity.
Yeah.
Sometimes totoo naman.
Yeah.
Because your faith age doesn't exactly match your actual
That's
maturity age.
That's true.
But it still is grace to meet God at our youth. Nisip ko nga kasi talaga parang, nga no, nakakapagod pala to. Kasi like, simulat sa pool pa lang. Eto na yung race na tinatakbo natin. Like, kailan pa ba ito matatapos? Yun nga, 1 kilometer pa lang.
1 kilometer.
That's why endurance, as you mentioned, is really the point of the game or the race. Christianity is about consistency,
Commitment.
even if may mga times talaga babagal yung pace natin, bibilis,
That's true.
hihirap. Important thing is to not stop. Hopefully. I don't know, marami bang pwede mangyari sa buhay talaga, di ba? So you really can't say.
Yeah.
But it still is grace nga talaga that can fuel us.
Yeah. It's carried me through, and I believe that it will continue to carry me through as well in the coming years. Yeah, I think for me, going back to the question earlier, what if I didn't know God at an early age? Would I choose differently? Would I choose to delay knowing the Lord and a relationship with Him? And I think at the end of the day, my answer is no. I think it's a privilege and a gift to know the Lord at such a young age and to start my journey with the Lord at such a young age. Because right now, ang dami kong baon na pwede kong dalhin and that I know I can bring into the future because I have seen the Lord work in my life ever since I could remember. And I think that's a gift because I am again fueled by that assurance and that reminder that the Lord has carried me through difficult circumstances before and He will continue to do so in the years to come. That's where my assurance and my confidence is that regardless of what happens in the future, I will be okay. And I don't think I would have known that or have been so confident in that if I had not known the Lord at such a young age. So thank you, Lord, for choosing me to get to know you at such a young age. And I'm grateful that you also gifted me with people and with friendships that have allowed me to experience your love more concretely in this lifetime.
Yeah. And salamat, Lord, sa buhay Kristiyano nga rin talaga. Alam ko, iba-iba yung mga journey natin. But for us, church kids, I mean, that's why we have this podcast anyways. Because of the love that we've experienced from the Lord, from our family, our community, it really is something that we feel like is worth sharing, di ba? Parang it's not to say that, oh, this is a better life or journey or whatnot. Well, basta si Lord nandun. Yun, I would say is yun yung best journey for anyone. And I can also say that with conviction from the ups and downs that we've experienced in community. So yun. Thank you, Bea. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having
your
me,
life.
fellow church kid.
Fellow church kids. Yes. Shout out na lang sa barkada namin.
Shout out to my great friends out there.
Yes, that ends this episode. And salamat, Lord, sa grace to be able to run. Maybe all continue to run the race and not get tired.
See you at the finish line.
Sana din.
So, if there's anything I learned, just because you are parang babad in that culture, in that teaching, it's really still up to you. Or in the light of losing someone, the first thing that you would think, or the first thing that I thought of was, hala, so hindi mo winil. Bakit? Ganon.